Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining IBTTA's Global Road Safety Week 2024. I'm Pat Jones. My guest today is Michael Vardi, co-founder and CBO of Valerann, an ITS company that enables road operators to leverage diverse mobility data to make real-time decisions. Michael was a scholar at Tel Aviv University, where he got his Bachelor of Science in Philosophy and Politics, and a Blavatnik Scholar at London Business School, where he was awarded his MBA degree. Michael, it's great to have you with us.
It's great to be here, Pat.
Well, Michael, this week is IBTTA's first ever Global Road Safety Week, and we're speaking with individuals who have a strong connection to roadway safety. So to begin, Michael, tell us about yourself and your company, Valerann.
Sure. So I'm Michael. I'm one of Valerann's co-founders, the CBO, which what that means is that I'm entrusted with the commercial aspects of the company around product, sales, marketing. And what I get excited about is working with our partners, the road operators, around looking at data and how they can use that to improve their operations, use their safety. And that's kind of why I'm at Valerann. What Valerann is an AI data company that enables road operators to leverage all of the data that we have in our ecosystem to make better decisions in real time, decisions that ultimately have a direct impact on the level of safety on our roads, the efficiency, the sustainability of our networks, and also the economic prospects of our clients.
All right, very good. So, Michael, IBTTA's Be Safe Together campaign is a call to action, and it's a reminder that every person on the road is part of a community of people who deserve empathy and respect. So, Be Safe Together emphasizes the little choices that drivers make at each step of their journey that can make a big difference in other people's lives. I'm thinking our campaign theme seems to fit well with one of your beliefs that the biggest determiner of road safety is driver behavior. Say more about that.
So I think the way I think about driver behavior, there's kind of like the choices we make, before we go on the road and the choices we make when we're on the road. Before we go on the road, are we rested? Do we know where we're going, that we're not going to have to look like down throughout the way, etc.? These are super important. But also the choices we make when we're on the road have a huge impact. And sometimes we're not aware of it because we don't really think about the people around us and how our actions impact their actions. And we've all been there. We're driving, we're stressed, and all of a sudden, someone I don't know, overtakes us suddenly, and we are suddenly anxious. Now, in that moment, we were lucky. We had our wits about us and we could continue driving, but that doesn't always happen. If you are, for a moment, you forget the people around you and you overtake from the left aggressively, you don't know the impact that you're having on the people who are driving next to you. Someone might be distracted and stressed next to you, and that small action you just took made them get distracted just enough to take an action that they can then be felt kind of as a shockwave, like on the traffic behind you. So you've already passed, but you don't know how your actions have been absorbed by the people behind you and the impact that has. And that impact, might be absorbed and everything will be okay, but it could also have catastrophic results. And so it's a reminder to all of us that we have to be kind and considerate when we're on the road, because how we interact indirectly with all the drivers around us is felt, and it has this butterfly effect, and it can result in quite serious consequences. So driver behavior, even in the small way, matters, and we just have to remember that.
Michael, you've articulated that in such a good way. I hadn't thought about the simple act of overtaking somebody on the left or the right, rapidly and sort of sending a shudder into the system. And it really points out that the little things do make a difference. The little things add up.
Mm-hmm.
You've said in another context that safety is a game of incremental improvements. Say more about that and the importance of taking an incremental approach to safety.
100%. So, I mean, just as the example before, right? There's so many elements that influence the level of safety on a network. and so many elements that are ultimately influencing how drivers behave in every specific context. And so it's important that all the players in the ecosystem, be it the drivers, the operators, different stakeholders, look at everything that's happening and see how can we make small improvements that will just make the driving experience that much easier to be safe. And so, I mean, we can talk about this in the Valerann context, which is the data context. A lot of the times we look at what's going on the road and we can see how specific elements, specific risk factors increase the overall risk, and how attending to a small factor in one location can reduce the overall risk of an entire section of road, the entire network. And nothing ever solves everything. And as a result, what we can do is piecemeal, kind of say, here I can make it slightly less likely that there'll be a sudden break. Here I can make it slightly less likely that people will slip because of black ice. Here I can make it slightly less likely that someone will hit the end of a queue. All these small things you do will make small 1% improvement, 2% improvement, and that's ultimately the only way to get to the net zero vision.
Sometimes when we use words like incremental, it can seem very theoretical. And I'd like us to get a little bit concrete here.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example or a case study that illustrates how your systems help road operators improve safety?
Yeah, I mean, I can give plenty. And let's start with an example that we did around how we helped identify the reason behind dangerous behavior and how small improvement basically changed the way drivers behaved to avoid dangerous behavior. So we were seeing in a certain road, we were getting a lot of detections around pedestrians on the road, and we saw that it was highly correlated to stopped vehicles. These are two different data sets that were coming at us, and we had two different dangerous behaviors that oddly happened at the same time at the same place. And that encouraged us to look more deeply into it. And what we found was that there were drivers who were stopping on a motorway after an exit, letting people off the vehicle who then on foot traversed the exit from the motorway, passed over the safety barrier in order to, ironically enough, be going to the nearby cemetery. Now, this information, what enabled the operator to do is to look at that and say, oh, okay, if I put a barrier after the safety barrier that prevents people from walking across to the cemetery, it would nullify the rationale of the vehicle stopping there. So this is one small thing done here that prevented an entire array of very dangerous behavior. But that's kind of like almost, you could say that's also a big improvement. There's also small improvements that we can make in real time based on granular data. So for example, we were working with a road that had like lots of bridges and tunnels. And what we saw this one time was this one bridge had quite a high risk over time. We saw that it has quite a high risk of accidents. And we correlated, trying to understand what drives that risk. And we saw that that risk was especially high when you had high volume of traffic, especially low visibility, when you had near freezing conditions. And what that enabled us to do is to look at the data in real time. And when the particular certain circumstances came together, we would alert the operator, who then was able to say, okay, first of all, I can now inform drivers of that specific context so that they can act more appropriately, slow down, but also do a small change, send gritters to prevent the icing so that danger doesn't happen. So in doing this small incremental improvement, you're both helping drivers avoid the dangerous behavior, but also potentially nullify the danger completely. And again, just by this small thing, you're not nullifying all ability to do it, all probability of accident, but you're definitely making a dent at the chances of it happening.
Michael, you make a distinction between educating and informing the driver. Talk about that distinction and how it relates to roadway safety.
Yeah, I think that's super important, and that's something we're very passionate about. So educating is something that we've been doing for a very long time. Road operators have been at the forefront of it, basically informing drivers what type of behavior they can engage in all the time to make sure that they're safer. being aware, being focused, being alert, so being not being tired, rested, simple things like wearing a seatbelt. All these things are part of the education. But then informing is helping the driver know in real time what is the context they find themselves in so they can adapt their behavior to it. And what we try to do is provide the road operator with the data and the tools to enable them to decide what do they need to share with the driver and when, in what context, so that the driver is better informed to take that preventative behavior and thus make the overall network much safer.
You use the expression real time, which to me seems like an overused expression. Explain to us what real time is. Why is it so important when it comes to roadway safety?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, if we go back to driver behavior, right? Different driver behavior is either safe or unsafe at different times. Driving slowly is not necessarily safe. If you drive slowly on a free flow motorway, that is not safe. And so the real-time context is super important to inform a driver of how they need to be behaving. So what we do is we look at what's happening real time and what's happening right now. What's the context right now on the road? What's the traffic flow? What's the visibility? Is there a vehicle on the hard shoulder in the foreseeable roadway? Is there icing on the road? And we use that context to help inform the communication strategy with the drivers that are upstream. And that enables the drivers then to make better decisions. So for example, usually you're supposed to drive on the rightmost lane. However, if you have a vehicle that is protruding into the rightmost lane, you want to inform the driver ahead of time so that they can move to the left lane. If you have icing on the road, you want to let them know so they can drive more slowly and have a larger distance from the vehicle ahead of them. Giving them that information so that just before they reach the place, they can engage in that behavior. That is what we talk about informing, and that's what we mean by real time.
So this week, Global Road Safety Week, we have several themes or several driver behaviors that we're trying to influence. Speeding, distracted driving, and impaired driving. And we have a day of each week devoted to them. Give me an example of how you identify high-risk driver behavior. What does that look like in practical terms?
So first of all, again, here, context matters a lot. We talked about speeding. Again, speeding is about the variance from the average. That's what you want to be looking at. So again, if you have free flow and suddenly you see a very, very slow truck, that's dangerous speeding. Or if you have people like drivers overall driving at a consistent 50-mile-an-hour speed and suddenly someone's going 80 miles, that is also dangerous speed. So the variance from the mean, if you will, that's what we want to be observing and tackling. When we talked about distracting, I mean, from our world, the thing that we look at is actually we try to observe lane changes, and lane changes for us, we don't look at it at an individual driver location, but we try to look at it at the network. Is there area with more lane changes? And that helps us know that a specific area is more dangerous. And that enables the operator to keep eyes on it and potentially also try and inform drivers, hey, eyes on the road, avoid changing lanes, kind of keep your distance so that they can create a bigger buffer for the drivers around them who might unfortunately be distracted.
Listening to you talk about the variances, it makes me think about going to the doctor's office, and the doctors, they take measurements, your weight, your heart rate, and your blood pressure. And, if your vitals are within certain range, they don't really care about it. They're looking for the outliers. And
Yes.
That's what you're looking for, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And, and that metaphor, and you can think also of our road networks as, as the kind of the blood network and providing oxygen to our whole nation. So it's quite right. And then when you have specific organisms within that block it or act disruptively, that can cause a disruption and damage throughout the whole network. So you're right; those outliers are important because they're the ones that put the entire network at risk.
Michael, your business seems to be organized around the question, how do we enable operators to inform drivers so that they can be safe? Is that an accurate characterization? And tell us why.
So 100%, I mean, our business is around enabling operators. We believe that operators are the epicenter of our industry, of the of this massive and crucial piece of infrastructure. And the more they are enabled and the more power they have to make decisions, to inform, to execute, the safer and more efficient our journeys will be. A big part of that is helping them inform drivers around what they can expect in real time so that they can make better decisions. That's today, and in the future it might even be, informing vehicles of what they can expect so they can make better decisions. But they're ultimately the ones that have to, the road operators, the ones that need to make the decision as to, the very hard decision of what information they wish to share, because there's a lot of information out there. So they need to kind of really look at all the information and say, this is most important. This is what's going to drive safety the most if my drivers know this. So this is what I'm going to share. And this other piece of information that it might also be important, I'm not going to share because I don't want to distract them. I want to make sure they're focused on the most important thing. And being able to tell those two things apart is critical in our journey of, of learning how to use data in the most effective way for road safety.
Road operators, when they think about using data and using it in very powerful and integrated ways, they might think, how am I going to get all this data? And you said that we need to make the most out of the data we have before we start investing in more data. Sounds like very practical advice to me for public agencies that are cash strapped. So why should public agencies follow that strategy?
Well, first of all, there's so much data out there today. I mean, you have obviously the legacy ITS, your cameras, your leads, your radars, but you're starting to get more and more novel, what we call floating data sources. So data from connected vehicles, from navigation apps, from social media, from weather sources and emergency services. All this information is today available. And what is prudent on us to do now is to understand what use cases each data set or the data sets in conjunction with one another can offer at what operational capacity. What's the latency, how accurate it is, how much can I actually leverage this? Because once we understand that and we can put it to practice, we can then start using that to monitor much larger parts of our network that today don't have legacy ITS to make better and faster decisions. And what's exciting about this is that as we learn to do this, more and more data sources will come in, our capabilities will improve, our capacity to make improvements will improve, and as a result, the safety on our networks will improve.
Michael, you guys have some operations or some business clients in the UK, and you mentioned to me in another conversation that 5,000 vehicles per day are stopped for some period of time on the national road network in Britain. How do you design a system to respond to that? And talk to us about the importance of context there.
Yeah. So once you start looking at the data, you can actually get overwhelmed by just the amount of events that happen on our network. You have, as I mentioned, like in some networks, you'll have thousands of alerts every single day coming at you. And so here, the context is crucial. So what we saw, not just here, many road networks, that what we'd usually call critical safety events, be it a stopped vehicle, a wrong-way driver, an object in the middle of the road, these happen every day in the thousands. And so it's not practical to want to respond to every one of them. However, there's a potential here to move from a reactive model of I hear of an accident and I reacted to a proactive preventative model. I see a risk and I mitigate it before it becomes an accident. The journey from one to the other goes through, first of all, knowing what's going on the road, but then using that data not only to alert me, because that'll be overwhelming, but to contextualize it so that I can prioritize what I react to and what, for now, I don't. So let's be practical here for a second. Let's say you have a stopped vehicle. A stopped vehicle can be either incredibly dangerous or or not that urgent, depending on a lot of things. Is it on the live lane or the hard shoulder? How large is the large shoulder? Is the hard shoulder? What's traffic like? Is it stopped or is it free flowing? What's visibility like? Is there ice on the road? Am I next to a tunnel or bridge or not? Having this information in conjunction with there is a stopped vehicle will inform the operator to know, do I need to respond to this urgently? Do I just need to inform drivers upstream so that they can take preventative measures? Or do I even just wait for now and see what happens? Because you know what? It's on the hard shoulder. The hard shoulder is 10 feet wide. Traffic is quite slow right now, so there's no real risk. That context really changes things. And if we leverage this, we can start going to a point saying the highest risk we mitigate, and we will see by doing so very quickly that we are actually potentially reducing accidents before they even happen.
I like that notion of context, and it comes into play, every day in conversations. You read an email, and maybe you get a little inflamed by it, but then you realize, oh, what was the context of this? And you can decide how important it is, or whether you should even be upset at all.
Yes. Yes.
I notice you're wearing a shirt with the Valerann logo, and I understand there's a story about the logo and what it says about the road operators who are your customers. Would you tell us that story?
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, the logo has the V for Valerann, but the reason we put it for other ones who are like me, comic fans, who might see that this is quite reminiscent of the Iron Man logo and other such superheroes. And the reason I mention Iron Man is because Valerann, we are a technology provider. But we are not the superheroes. The road operators are the superheroes. They're the ones that are responsible to listen out if someone's in trouble. And if there's a risk, they're the ones who coordinate a response and make sure everybody's safe. And if there's an accident, God forbid, they're the first ones on the ground to try and secure, to mitigate, to help save lives. That is what superheroes do. What we do is we provide them the technology, we provide them the suit that makes them the superhero. And we believe that with that technology, with the data and the ability to use it, road operators have the potential of delivering huge improvements in road safety, both by understanding the context, but then also informing and educating drivers on how to drive more carefully within that context.
I know our toll road operators are going to love thinking of themselves as superheroes. You heard it here first. Michael Vardi says you toll road operators are superheroes because
Yeah.
you save lives every day. That's great. I love that. I love that. So, Michael, the history of your company suggests that private operators have been key to your development and success. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we used to be a kind of novel technology startup. We're much more founded now and have a lot of companies worldwide. But in the beginning, the first ones who would kind of, who would innovate with us and prove that our technology works and delivers impact were the private operators. They're the ones that have oftentimes both the financial incentive and resources and also procurement routes to make that happen. And this is crucial because what that enabled us to do is once we proved the impact with the multiple private operators we work with today, that opened up the route to start working with DOTs. And that's where we start seeing the state and the national level impacts once you work with these much larger operators. But our anecdotal experience is that it would have been a lot harder to try and go directly to that scale without going through the toll road operators. So I think here toll road operators have this pivotal and crucial role in introducing innovation that can have a measurable large impact on safety into our entire industry by taking it on, seeing if it works, seeing how to make it work. Because it's not just about the technology, it's about what you do with it, and seeing how to make it work, and then showcasing the world, hey, this is what you could do, and then from there let the DOTs adopt it.
Michael, this has been a lot of fun, and we're almost out of time. But before we go, I want to ask you one last question. What final words of wisdom do you have before we sign off today?
I mean, if you'll allow me, I'll say two quick ones. The first is to the road operators, is that there's a lot of technology out there, and here, but it's not just about the technology. Ultimately, it's about what you do with it. There's a lot you can learn, a lot data can give you, but you need to adapt what you do and how you do it to the technology to really drive that impact. That's number one. And to the drivers is just remember that that the way you drive is felt and it has an impact on the people around you, even if you don't see it, and you probably don't see it, but it does. So please consider that when you make your small choices, because those can have ripple effects around you that you will never see.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. And to
And
all
all
our viewers, thank you for joining us and be safe together. Thanks,
thank you.
everybody.